So I'm Charlie Meecham, and I originate from Oxfordshire. That's where I was born. However, I was educated in the north of England and studied photography in Manchester around 1970, something like that. I always really liked living in the north. One way or another, I've ended up spending most of my life up here. In those days, of course, we only had film. You know, you'd spend an awful lot of time learning how to use that particular technology, if you like, which meant, how to expose film correctly, how to process it. And alongside that, of course, there was this idea about formats. If you were doing colour and you wanted to get a lot of detail, using the larger formats was the preferable way to go. And I got very interested in using 5.4. Mainly because I wanted to do landscape work, and to photograph in the landscape, I felt you really did need a lot of detail. In the early days, I was using 5.4, and really kept going with that camera, possibly a little longer than I should have done. It was very expensive to use as well. So, for instance, when I was working down in Oxfordshire, I could afford really to take about 6 photographs a week. And I quite liked it because I was really into this idea of being very committed to not making huge quantities of work, but more trying to slow down, really. Trying to make work that was a little bit more contemplative, perhaps. I still maintain that kind of desire, to do that. Then a bit later on, I did actually get round to looking at using medium format camera. So if I was working on a particular project, I would explore the area carrying this smaller camera with me, and I would literally be taking photographs in the way of making notes. And then I would review those images and think, oh right, this is quite a significant location. And so then I'd go back and with the plate camera and rephotograph it. Looking back, I realised that a lot of this notebook work that I'd done was actually quite significant. I do see myself as a documentary photographer, but documentary photographers like Parr and so on kind of think that documentary photography always has to have a face, somebody in it. I do look at other photographers' work and pick out certain things, I think, and they sort of go into the subconscious and maybe re-emerge. I'm particularly interested in photographers like, for instance, Luigi, an Italian photographer, who again was sort of exploring his local environment often. So he's someone whose work I continually feel inspired by. But there are loads of people, other visual artists and painters and so on. Recently I've been doing a piece of work that combines painting with photography. I think probably the largest project was the Oldham Road project, and I began that in the mid-1980s. And I was very interested in considering what Britain was like in the north during Thatcher's Britain, when everything was sort of changing, and it was quite a harsh time. So I chose to do a piece of work along the Oldham Road, which is a 9-mile stretch between Manchester and Oldham. It's a corridor road, really. And the thing that was happening was that there was a lot of redevelopment. Communities were being broken up one way or another. And I wanted to see how that was evidenced by, if you like, the gaps that were appearing. And then I left that project and returned to it in the 90s. So 25 years on, really, I was having another go, revisiting some of the places that I'd originally photographed to see how things had turned out, really. If an old theatre had been torn down, for instance, and nothing had been built to replace it, so you've just got this gap, That seemed like a good, quite an interesting statement to make. But I carried on shooting on film, even though by then there was a lot more sort of digital work happening, because I wanted a consistency. I wanted to try and make those changes seamless in a way. So what I'm currently working on is an exhibition that's going to launch at Dean Clough in February. It's going to be a group exhibition, and it's called Modelling the Animal. We've been looking at aspects to do with kind of human interaction with animals. In my case, I've been photographing the dodo, or dodo models. The thing that interests me in this aspect is that they're all different, and yet they're presented in a sort of quasi-scientific environment. The information surrounding the bird is pretty incidental, and there isn't much material to even describe what the bird looks like in an accurate way. The dumpy little bird, for instance, that we all sort of kind of know and love, well, it wasn't like that really. That dumpy little bird managed to survive a sea crossing. To stay alive was fed on ship's biscuits, and so it plumped up rather like a turkey would. Well, I think the thing that's good about Miniclick is that it's very of itself, and it's totally reliant upon the people who are interested and enthusiastic to actually bring people together, talk about photography, have a look at the work of different people, share ideas. I think that's absolutely great. Photographers, although they're out and about and interacting with the world, you're still quite cut off actually working like that. And I think it's good to have these opportunities where people can come together and look at things and do things and think about things and all that. It's good. It's good.